Who's Tom and Dick, a weekly podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers, fighting stage 4 lung cancer, and Patrick Mortimer, living with heart disease. Why not grab yourself a cup of coffee, sit back, and enjoy the chatter as we discuss and share information, talking about tough subjects, and offering help, support, and motivation with a positive mental attitude.
Good morning, Martin.
Hello, Patrick. How are you?
Back bright and cheerful again today.
I know. Another day and another celebrity, eh?
Another celebrity. Well, today we have one of the A-list celebrities currently on mainstream TV in a number of shows at this present day. Probably the most popular one at the moment is the 1% Club.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say there's too many to name, because when you look at his list of game shows that he's actually done, then, we'd be here the whole podcast naming them all. But I think, should we get on with it and introduce our guest?
I think I've already introduced the main man. Please welcome our special guest today, Mr. Lee Mack.
I was going to say, your podcast, you're both very incredibly positive, more positive than me, who's got nothing really to whinge about, and yet I spend my life with, I've realised.
Phrase.
It was my very good mate, Sean Locke, who passed away a few years ago. I remember him telling me that he'd been diagnosed and he was terminal. And it is a cliche to say his positive attitude was incredible, but it really was. It was almost like when he phoned me over the next few years, he was putting your mind at rest rather than the way around. It wasn't like. It's almost like the subtext of everything he was saying was, "Are you all right with this?" To me,
Yeah.
And it was incredible. Right up until I saw him just very close to when he died. And he was still cracking gags.
Yeah,
You've got a good. That's a good list.
Yeah, it's growing, and we appreciate guys like you.
And you'll be added to it.
Well,
Yeah.
it just shows you what you can do with a 20 grand cash fee. Well done.
Yeah. Only 20 grand I got them cheap.
I mean, bigger, but I'm assuming it's somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I'll speak to Ryan later.
Yeah. It's my agent.
Well, it's been nice talking to you, Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much is that?
Don't worry, it's not per minute.
All right, okay. Lee, we're sort of, as you know, we're sort of healthcare based to a certain extent. So our questions sort of come from probably a different angle than most. And I'd like to touch on your self-diagnosis of ADHD.
Yes, well, self-diagnosis is a weird one. I've just done Paul Whitehouse's podcast about ADHD.
I saw that.
Yeah, and him and his wife's been diagnosed with it, and I was the only guest that's been on that hasn't officially been diagnosed. I've been given a sort of weird diagnosis because I wrote an autobiography, and the publishers sort of said, and rightly so, it's not very auto, is it? It's very just it's about comedy really, rather than your life. Could you make it a personal? And I didn't really want to do that, which I accept is shortchanging the people buying the book. So as a little sort of format idea, I went to see a psychiatrist and said, look, this is the deal. You read the book, and after every chapter, you can interview me about the chapter, and I'll include it in a sort of script form. So at the end of chapter 1, it says Lee walks into a psychiatrist, and then it's almost like a sitcom, but it's based on everything that was really said. And it was during those conversations that she said, I'm pretty sure you've got ADHD. In fact, I can virtually guarantee it. But obviously there is an official test you have to do. And she said it would be very unusual to give someone put it one way, she said, it's not how we usually diagnose ADHD by reading an autobiography of somebody and then interview. But given that I sat in that chair with her for, I don't know what it was, 10, 15 sessions, she said, you've got it, I promise you. And she was the cousin of Jedward.
Oh, was she?
And she said, if there's one thing I know about, it's ADHD.
Yeah.
I've noticed how extremely quick you are with your quips on Would I Lie to You and things like that. You are extremely quick. And I'd compare you with Eric Morecambe.
Oh, well, that's my comedy hero, so that's a lovely compliment. I don't put myself in the same bracket myself, but obviously I'll take the compliment.
Yeah, well, I can see traits of Eric Morecambe in you because he was always really quick-witted, and he was always entertaining, even when he was at home. Are you similar to that?
Well, I think, I mean, listen, if you talk to my kids and said, what's he like at home? I think they'd probably just say, he just does very bad dad jokes. So I sort of take it as a badge of honor. If I like it if they laugh at my jokes, but I will take a raised eyebrow and, oh my God, that is such a dad joke. I'll almost take that as almost as good as a laugh, because not only am I proud of my dad joke, it slightly irritated them, which is a double bonus. So yeah, I mean, to what extent, I am I am able to switch off at home. I guess we don't. Yeah, comedy doesn't really come into our house much. I mean, I don't mean comedy in terms of we're always having a laugh. It's a thing that unites our family, my wife and my kids. We love sort of having a laugh. But my work doesn't come into my house much. As the years have gone on, I think they slightly watch less and less of the stuff I'm in because they're teenagers. They don't want to know about a BBC One studio sitcom, do they?
Yeah.
So do you have a room in your house where you actually go and write your stuff, or do you write somewhere?
I'm in it now.
Oh, okay.
This
That's
is
your
my
office, yeah.
room, which if I just pan to the left, my new pride and joy, which I had to make myself get rid of a few years ago, is a dartboard. It's a bit dark,
Oh,
but that dartboard, which I've only just put up because I've always been slightly obsessed with darts, and I just wasn't getting any work done. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I just got rid of the dartboard. But it's the Luke Littler effect. I've been getting back into the darts, going, I'm going to get a dartboard again and put it up on the wall. And already it's distracting me.
Well, we had Bobby George on a couple of weeks ago.
Bobby George. I played in the Comet Relief Darts, and I can't remember who told me, but they were laughing their head off, and they said, I've just heard Bobby being interviewed. And he was asked, what's it like to score 180? To which Bobby replied, it's like 1,000 butterflies flying out your arsehole. An incredible phrase.
That sounds like him, because that's the only podcast we've done where we thought we might have to bleep a few answers.
He is from that. I've just watched the documentary. I've watched so many recently, but I think it's on. Gosh, what's it on? Is it on Sky? Yeah, I think it is. It's about the Dart Kings. It's called.
Hmm.
One's about Eric Bristow, one's about Jockey Wilson, and one's about Phil Taylor. But Bobby crops up in them,
Yeah.
And I was when I did the Comet Relief Darts, he was one of the guys that was around, and it was just brilliant,
Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of your many. I was going to name the quizzes, but it would have taken all this podcast, I think, to name all the quizzes you've been on and done. But can I take you back to the Red Rum story? That really interests me.
Are you a horse racing fan?
I like it. I'm not a huge fan, but I mean, obviously, Red Rum, when I was growing up, winning the national and everything.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, I would say that Red Rum is probably the most famous horse ever in Britain. I'm just so glad you brought him up, because the truth of the matter is a lot of people, the younger generation, shall we say, have no idea. And some people think it's just a reference to The Shining. Shining, he says, Red Rum. Yes, so Red Rum won the Grand National 3 times in the 70s. And he's from my hometown. And I was at college. And basically, he was trained in my hometown. I was at college. I got thrown out of college because I was an idiot. I was 16 and an idiot. And I decided I better do something with my life. And horse racing was on the telly. So I just rang my local stables up and said, any chance I can have a go at being a jockey? Even though I had no experience, and probably 15 minutes before that conversation had no interest either. Thinking, well, I've got to do something. So, I don't know, why don't I be a jockey? So I rang up the stables of Red Rum, Ginger McCain, and just asked the question, are you looking for anyone to learn? Because I was a very skinny little kid, I thought I could maybe have a chance. I just had this deluded idea that being a jockey is one of the few sports where you can sort of have a go at it. I mean, you couldn't decide to become a professional footballer at 16.
No.
But I thought maybe you can as a jockey. It's deluded because it's extremely difficult and dangerous. But at the time, I just thought, yeah, I'll be able to do that. How hard can it be?
That reminds me of one of your sketches you did where you were, well, your head was through a hedge and you had a small body.
That's right. Well, I think that inspired that because I used to work with a lot of Irish jockeys at that time. There was Irish jockeys at the stable, you know. I couldn't understand a word they were saying because their accents were so strong. But often in races, when you see them being interviewed, they're so out of breath. Shows you how deluded I was. It really is quite a physical sport, you know. And the amount of times I've watched those interviews and just really struggled because of the speed and the energy that they're talking at, you know.
Yeah. So going back to your darts, you actually held 2 world records, didn't you, at one time?
I did. I mean, one of them's a bit of a basically they saw me do the Comic Relief does darts and saw that I could play a bit. So I should point out when I say I can play a bit, I mean in comparison to say in comparison to what you probably expect, I'm all right. But professional, I'm nowhere near the mark. I'm not, you know. But I grew up in a pub, so I've played a lot. And they saw me win the Comic Relief darts, and so they said, as a bit of a fun thing on a show called, well, you remember Record Breakers back in the 70s? Well, the new version of that is called Officially Amazing, and it's a children's TV show for record breaking. And they got in contact and said, "Do you want to have a go for comic effect at doing the most number 2s in a minute?" You know, because it sounds funny. Not really. I take darts quite seriously, so I said, "Well, I'm happy to have a go at your little feature, the feature of the most number 2." Obviously, meaning the most number 2s with a dart on a dot.
Yeah.
Actually, that record probably didn't exist. They were making the record for me, so I said, "I'll do it, but I would like to have a go at a proper record as well." And they said, "Well, you can have a go at the most bullseyes in a minute," which is currently standing at. Here's my memory playing tricks on me now. I think it was 11. I think the record previously to me was 11. And you have 60 seconds to throw 3 darts at the bullseye. I don't know if you play darts, but they count the outer 25 as well, the green, the outer.
Yeah.
So it's bull or outer bull. You throw 3 darts, so you go and collect them, you throw again. You don't just have a big wad of darts in your hands, because that would actually be impossible, because you'd fill up the tape. So you're backwards and forwards. That's part of the battle. Running to the board, getting them out, throwing them, running to the board, getting them back out again. And I did about 4 or 5 hours of this and eventually got 12. So I was in the Guinness Book of Records. So that was a little childhood dream. But as soon as the professionals found out, because I bragged about it on television, they all had a go as well.
Yeah, James Wade come along, didn't he?
Every time I see James Wade now, I think he stole my glory.
But at least you had it at one time. Did you get a certificate?
Yes, I did. I don't know where it is, but it's framed somewhere, on a wall somewhere.
When we spoke to Bobby George, he was telling us that the treble 20s are much bigger now than they were when he played, because they use thinner wire.
Well, that's probably true, actually. Yeah, I would imagine that they are. Yeah, they're probably a bigger thing. I mean, it's interesting. There's an old show called Indoor League with Fred Truman.
Oh God, I remember that.
Yeah, well, Indoor League helped introduce darts to television, because it wasn't really a television game until I think Fred Truman showed it. And there's a clip I saw of it. I talked about it on a TV show, actually, where there were no trebles.
Yeah.
And he talks about it in a very proud northern way. He goes, "This is a proper northern board, no trebles." Because I think the idea was, if you throw at a treble and miss, it's fine. You're going to hit 20, right?
Yeah.
If there's no trebles to hit, then you have to, if you want to score big, you might have to aim at the doubles. And there's a lot more at risk then, because if you miss, you score nothing.
Yeah.
The Fred saw it as a proper man's board.
Yeah. He always used to finish the program, didn't he? I'll sit there.
I'll sit there. And what was about that program was it was actually commissioned for children's television.
All right.
And it then moved into the sort of more adult slot. But when it was originally, you remember in the old days on terrestrial TV, you would have like a 1.5 hour window or something for kids' TV between about when schools finished at 3:30 or whatever till about 5:30 or something, 5:30. There's a little window of TV, because there was no kids' TV channels as such. It was just, and now it's the kids' hour, you know, and they'd have a bit Crackerjack followed by a little Paddington Bear episode and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think he was part of that. And it's quite odd seeing the old clips of him introducing kids' TV with a pint of bitter and a pipe.
Yeah.
You're holding a pipe going, hello, boys and girls.
Yes, but there were a few interesting connotations in Captain Pugwash as well, wasn't there?
Well, yeah, I'm going to shatter your dreams here, I'm afraid, Paddy.
I know what you're going to say, Lee. Yeah, it's not right, is it?
Not true.
Isn't it?
No.
Oh, right.
It shows you the power of fake news.
Yeah.
Well, he had a court case, didn't he, over it? And the guy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a court case to say that wasn't true.
Yeah.
So, the people made them up, the names.
There was no masturbates or semen stains. It's we've all
the cabin boy.
But I do. Yeah, I do. I'm fascinated by those things. Those things that society all agree on.
Yeah.
Same with in Monopoly. There are two things in Monopoly when you play it that everybody plays, but is not in the rules, and that is if you pay a fine, you put it under free parking, and when you land on free parking, you win all that money.
Yeah.
Right. Not in the rules, but we've all decided as a nation that's a better rule. The other one is, in the real rules, when you go round once, you then can start buying property after you've been round once. But if you elect not to buy it, everyone's allowed to bid on it. We all decided that's a rubbish rule, we're not doing that. So even though the fact that someone in Brighton is playing the same rules as someone in Aberdeen that we've all invented, I find fascinating, And it was pre-internet. It's not like we decided verbally and somehow it spreads and everyone goes, yeah, free parking, land on there, you get all the money. That's a good rule.
Yeah.
And the same with urban myths, isn't it? We've all decided that Captain Pugwash had rude names.
It is fascinating, and it's funny you should say that, because this week I was reading in the newspaper that cannonballs were stored on a ship years ago, and they were stored on a frame called a brass monkey.
Right. Oh, I see.
And when it got cold, that expanded and the balls fell off. And this is where that saying comes from. Freeze the balls off a brass monkey. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love stuff like that.
So, all these things come from somewhere and spread.
He's full of useless information, Lee.
So I think people just assume it means if a little model of a monkey that's made of brass, it's so cold, balls will fall off.
Yeah, that's what we all thought, I think.
Yeah. So Lee, you're currently on TV. It started last weekend, the 1% Club.
Yes.
And was England the first country to do that, or was it in Australia first?
No, absolutely England, yeah. So the UK edition is the original.
Yeah.
Made by two really great guys called Dean and Andy, who I'd worked with before. We did a show on Sky called Duck Quacks Don't Echo.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sort of slightly like QI, it had that sort of interesting facts angle to it. But we used to do big experiments. So, I'd be hoisted onto the ceiling or electrocuted in a car by lightning, and it was on a big scale, but it was I'd done 2 or 3 series with them of that. So they didn't, they like to do telly that they want to watch themselves rather than what they think people want to watch, which is always a good sign in a way. And they just wanted to do a quiz show that was slightly different to the other ones in that you didn't need to know anything. You didn't have any general knowledge it actually came about because Dean, who, this is his words, not mine, but he sees himself as the uneducated one, and Andy as the sort of Oxbridge type.
Right.
But in the lunch breaks, he was getting the Daily Mail logic questions, and Andy wasn't.
Right.
Showing that, there's only so far, and education can get you. Then you have to rely on a bit of common sense and logic, and so he just thought, wouldn't it be interesting to sort of test the nation on their sort of logic, lateral thinking skills, So,
well, it certainly does get the nation thinking. I mean, were you sort of, you obviously you did a pilot show, I presume, and then it took off from there. And you must have been a bit worried if it wasn't going to take off, or.
Well, it's interesting actually because in the pilot we had. The way the studio is laid out it's a big show physically, there's a lot of stuff to put in there. So there's only room for 100 people. There's no room for like a whole bank of audience of 500 watching in a normal situation like Would I Lie to You or my sitcom not going out. There's no audience other than the contestants. And I said, well, look, if you want me to be cracking jokes, they're going to be a tough crowd. They want to win money. So why don't we build like a bank of an audience, even if it's just 100 people that aren't playing along, and then they can hopefully laugh at the gags, you know?
Yeah.
And we did. They built it. We did the pilot. But actually, what happened was I was watching them and they weren't listening to the gags either. What were they were playing along because they were sort of captivated by the questions. And I suppose as a comic, that should put me off. But actually, it was the opposite. It made me go, this is a really good format because they were really engaged in the format here. So as long as I accept that and work out where to do the gags, then I think we can make this work, you know. So we never used an audience after that pilot. We just had the 100 people as the audience.
Mm.
So it can be, you know, I love doing it. It's a challenge as a comic because I always think of it as a bit like if I said to you heads or tails for £1,000,000 and you said heads and I flipped the coin and I looked at it but didn't tell you, and then I said, right, before I tell you the result, let me tell you a quick joke. I think you'd be classed as a tough crowd at that moment because you want to know if you've won £1,000,000. Well, it's not 1,000,000, but it's still up to 100 grand. And that's what they want to know. Are they through to the next round or not? So it's a challenge, but we've learned over the years the way to play it, I think. So
Are you any good at it?
well, what I've never done is I've never, because I see them in rehearsal, and I've never gone from beginning to end without using a pass. Sorry, well, I don't get a pass because I'm just playing along, you know, for my own.
Yeah.
So I've never got them all right. I've done it to the point where I maybe would have got one wrong, but in the real show I would have used my pass. So I have gone all the way, as it were. But my little challenge to myself is, can I just get them all right without a pass or anything? But I'm all right. You get better. You really do. The more you do, you start. I mean, the first series, not a clue. But as the series went on, I sort of part of your brain gets exercised a bit, and you start learning how to do them a bit. You know. How do you get on, or don't you watch it?
Yeah, no, we were talking about it before you came on. Sometimes you can obviously see an answer. Sometimes the obvious answer is there and you don't see it, and you think, God, how did I miss that?
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing that I feel, and I think you did the same as well, didn't you, Pat?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me they can sometimes go out on a very easy 80% question, and then they get them all right. They go all the way to the 1%. The thing is, what I find interesting is when people play at home, they think, oh, I'm pretty good at this. But what no one really wants to admit to themselves is they might just get it after 33 seconds or 34 seconds. Or they might occasionally pause and go make a cup of tea. Or, you know, and there's definitely no pressure like there is in the studio. So, yeah, it's a bit like my deluded attitude towards being a professional darts player.
And footballer, Lee.
And football. I'm deluded in many aspects of sport.
Well, I watched last night your penalty that you scored, the winning penalty on Soccer Aid, because we've obviously done some research. But how did it feel playing against all those?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I've done it for, I think, 7 years now. You know, it's still, you know, I'm a big football fan and I've always been no good at football. You know, I didn't even make the school team. And what happens when you do Soccer Aid, you're obviously with ex-professionals, but you're also with certainly in the early days of Soccer Aid, where a lot of the celebrities, you know, you say to them, how come you're so good? And they say, oh, well, before I was an actor, I was signed for Arsenal till I was 15. So they all reached a good level before they became whatever, reality actors, comedians. And I never had that. I wasn't even in the school team. And there's not many of us. There's usually about 3 or 4 that are like me that go, yeah, I never made the school team. And we're all the rubbish ones, right? And so for me to be in that environment where I'm scoring to a sold out stadium like the Etihad, or I mean, I don't want to just crowbar in, but I scored twice.
Yes.
I once scored at the Etihad, I once scored at West Ham's, you know, is it the London Stadium? Yeah. So it was pretty exciting to say that.
Who do you support then, Lee? Is it Man U?
No, it's Blackburn.
God, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did read that.
Bit of a downer. They have. I'm sure everyone thinks that about their own side, but Blackburn really have a reputation for going on real runs, both negatively and positively. They're currently on a very negative run at the moment, but they won like 6 or 7 on the bounce, so they are still really close to the playoffs.
Just before Christmas, they were they're around about the playoffs.
Yeah, then but this is the first week in a long time they've dipped out the playoffs, so they're sort of 1 point below. So you just every week it's so exciting and tense because if they win, you feel like this is the start of a 6-week run of them winning.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that to kick in again at the moment.
So we're at Ipswich Town.
Are you an Ipswich fan?
I am, yes. Yeah.
I'm Laguna, Lee.
How are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to go on to your sitcom now,
Yes.
not going out. How long does it take you to write an episode of one of those, or does it vary?
Well, I budget with time 3 weeks an episode, but in reality, I don't write it for 3 weeks, then move on to the next one. So we've just done a series of 6 episodes. Every year it changes the amount of episodes, but this latest batch is 6, so I'll allot about 18 weeks. I'll usually round it up a bit, so I'll say, right, 20 weeks, about 5 months for that. But in reality, because I write it with somebody else called Danny Peake, he will be writing a draft of one whilst I'm writing a draft of the other, and then maybe a third one on the boil because we're trying to do the storyline of that. So they all exist at different sort of stages. By the time you get to the end of the process, you can be working on 4 at the same time. But I roughly give 3 weeks an ep. You know? So it's of the things I am involved in, it's the big one. It's the main one. It's my, it's what's dominated at least 60-70% of my thought for the last 20 years in my profession. Everything, not everything, but it's most things.
So do you suddenly have an idea and then go and write it in a notebook, and then come back to it, or?
I'm very off and on with my comedy. It's the same with stand-up. If I'm preparing for a tour, I haven't toured for quite a few years, but when I'm preparing for a tour, it's like a part of my brain clicks in. So if I see something that catches my eye in the street that makes me laugh or think, oh, I could do a joke about that, it's like I'm on high alert for it, looking for it. But when I'm not, the most hilarious, 2 nuns could walk off a bus and fall into a massive bowl of custard and I wouldn't spot. I'm not looking out for it. I'm and it's the same with my sitcom. If I'm in the process of writing, then yes, I will spot things. But you've just caught me I've just finished.
Yeah.
So an episode could be staring me in the face about something that happens in my real home life and I wouldn't spot it. So it depends what phase I'm at. But yeah, generally we've been going now 20 years. 20 years this year was when the pilot was made. So we've got a huge 150-page document with all the ideas that have never seen the light of day. So every now and again we'll go back through it and we'll try and introduce, there's some that have been rejected for 16 years. We go, is this the year we do that idea? Nah, let's...
Over 100 episodes, Lee.
Correct, yeah. So we've just written another 6. So I've written 106 episodes now, but we've filmed and broadcast 100 now.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Still a long way to go before we catch Last of the Summer Wine. They're about 300.
Yeah. So you've won obviously lots and lots of awards because I looked on Wikipedia to see what you've won. What are you most proud of? And I think
I wouldn't necessarily trust Wikipedia, given that for a while they said that I was Russ Abbott's nephew on Wikipedia.
Oh no.
I've never met Russ Abbott, so he's definitely he's not my uncle. Not that I know of.
So what was your favourite award that you've won? I think I know what you're going to say, but what is your favourite award?
I know it always sounds disingenuous when people say this, but I don't really have one because I don't. I have mixed feelings about awards, to be honest with you, because I think particularly because I do a studio-based sitcom, which is they're very unfashionable. They don't get awards, and it's sort of ignored. So perhaps it's a self-preservation thing, but I've always felt it's not too important because my sitcom's been going 20 years and it's not needed any awards. So I think if I was delighted to get an award, say for Would I Lie to You, which I have done, if I thought of that as a badge of recognition, then I'd have to accept that the reverse is true and that my sitcom's no good. And you don't want to be working on a show for 20 years and thinking that way. So I sort of park that part of my brain. I don't, but I suppose getting a BAFTA was nice because it's sort of seen as quite a prestigious thing, and it's a very posh event, and you get very dressed up.
Yeah.
But it's also true that I won a BAFTA for my appearance in Would I Lie to You, but the show itself has been nominated about 7 or 8 times, and it's never won. And every year we would go together as a group, our wives and the producers, and every year we just lose. We don't win it. You know.
But at least you're getting the recognition, Lee. That's the main thing.
I mean, put it one way, before I got my BAFTA a few years ago, I'd only been associated with one show that won a BAFTA, which was about 2002 or something. It was called The Sketch Show on ITV. So it was the only show I've been associated with that won a BAFTA, but it is also the only show that I've been involved in that got cancelled mid-run following the BAFTA. So you don't really need these things because, the show was cancelled. So, I mean...
That's the viewing figures that count, really?
I guess so. And also, it's just a little bit... I think we live in quite a sort of class-ridden society where we it's not who's watching you. Sorry, it's not how many are watching you, it's who's watching you. People are...
right, okay.
I mean, critics are a perfect example. If you get a rave review off a critic, it means the world to people. And I'm not saying I'm immune to this. I've been known to it as well. But if you get a nice review off Maureen from Hartlepool, a review meaning she just loves the show and she watches it, doesn't have the same artistic weight to the performer, And I always find that quite interesting because I think what we're saying is, but some people's opinions are worth a lot more than other people's, and I'm a bit dubious. Yeah. Hence probably my cynicism about awards. Because it's not the award itself that we like, it's that we like the fact that in our industry that we're liked. Because we're, in 30 commas, supposedly the important people. And I don't want politics. So I try and remember that Maureen from Hartlepool's opinion is worth as much as the Guardian critic who's on the BAFTA panel.
Yeah, we started off as a comedy double act.
I believe so, yeah.
And we got some reviews in newspapers, linking us with Reeves and Mortimer. They do a similar kind of thing, but it was the old girls that we used to, and old blokes, that we used to meet afterwards, who used to talk about what we did. That we sort of went with more, didn't we, Pat?
Yeah.
Where did you perform?
Theatres, working men's clubs,
holiday camps. Anywhere who'd book us, basically.
Well, that background, I was a Pontins Bluecoat for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Were you around in the 80s?
93 we started.
Well, I was late 80s at the holiday camp.
Yeah. Patrick started as a comedy hypnotist.
Did you?
Yeah. I was a comedian and he wanted a support act. And we had Elkie Brooks from Stars in Their Eyes, and that was our show that we took around different theatres, wasn't it, Pat?
That's fantastic. Did you... I'm obsessed with the world of hypnotism because we used to have them regularly at Pontins,
Yeah.
And I'm a cynic. I used to think, they're just playing along, these people, but every now and again you talk to someone, you go, you just went along with that, didn't you? They went, no, I genuinely didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, oh, do you remember the one with the dog, Hypno Dog?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
He used to have a dog, and I thought. That's when I started to get very cynical. I thought, we're not even hypnotising them now. The dog's hypnotising.
Yeah. Well, you find that subjects that are easier to hypnotise are those that are used to taking orders.
Right.
I used to do a lot of army barracks dues and things like that, and police force Christmas parties and things like that because they're easy to hypnotise.
Really?
Yeah, but you've got two minds. You've got a conscious mind and a subconscious mind.
Yeah.
You use your conscious... I mean, you can drive your car for 20 miles, get from A to B, and get to the end of the journey and think, I don't remember any of that journey, because you were thinking something else.
Of course, yeah.
With your conscious mind, but your subconscious mind was just doing all the job, driving the car, indicating. So, yeah, it is really...
I've never got out of my car, eaten an onion, and then started dancing when someone's played an Elvis. Oh. So, but and for those that are thinking, what the hell does that mean? That's how I imagined what stage hypnotism was when I was at Pontins, But yeah, no, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I absolutely believe in hypnotism.
Yeah.
Do you remember Effing a Cuckoo?
I do.
Patrick did the Norwich City footballers party. And we're not giving nothing away because obviously what we do professionally. And but anyway, he went up to Patrick when he had his microphone. And he said, there is no way this man is going to hypnotise me. Within 5 minutes of sitting down and doing all the things, he was hypnotised. I couldn't. I was doing the sound for Pat that night, and John Polston, who used to play for Spurs and Norwich. This was during the time when they was doing well against Bayern Munich and Inter Milan in Europe. He he got made up by, I forget what player did it, but he had lipstick and eyeshadow and everything. He went in the toilets when I was in there, and he was fuming because he didn't realise what had happened when he was hypnotised. So
he used to play for Wimbledon, didn't he? Efan Akuku.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
I remember that is because I used to do a terrible joke. Well, I haven't heard that name for years, and I'm just thinking, why do I know that name? Obviously, I follow the football, but also I remembered then that I saw a terrible pun where my joke was something like, "I saw that Wimbledon player in a coffee shop the other day, effing a cocoa. No, I think he was having a coffee like everybody else." I'm proud of that play on words, but I think you'd have to really know the name effing a cocoa for that to work.
That's right.
So on Would I Lie to You, what would be your most, how can I put this? Because you've had so many good guests, but have you got one that really stands out?
Well, I think everyone's favourite is Bob.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm like a sort of team member now. He's the only person that's on every series. And we all love Bob as well. So when Bob's on, we're all happy. We know it's going to be a great show. And he's such a nice guy, Bob, and he's naturally hilarious. So you know it's going to be all right. But there's been loads of people. Another one of my favourites, he's only been on it a couple of times, I think, but it's John Cooper Clarke. Because he's such an unlikely person to be on a panel game because of his demeanour. But that's what makes it brilliant,
Yeah.
It's such an incredible... I'm a big fan of his anyway, but he's got such a credible turn of phrase. I remember, I think he came on and they said, "Is it a truth or a lie, John?" And John said, "Let's just say it's not playing out nicely in the playground of my imagination." I thought it was an incredible way of saying true or lie. Another one of his lines that really made me laugh was he claimed that he had, I can never remember if these things are true or not years later, but he claimed that he once shared a flat with a monkey in Amsterdam. And during the story, he said, "There are many things in life that are disappointing. Sharing a flat with a monkey is not one of them."
I remember when Bob came out with the one where he burnt his kitchen down.
Yeah.
With a box of standard fireworks. Now, that sounded silly, but I knew exactly.
Yeah.
I used to have the standard fireworks, but my kids looked around.
No, exactly what you mean, because I wouldn't. Are standard fireworks still a thing?
No, I don't think they are.
The name of the company.
Yeah.
Which is an unusual brand, isn't it, if you think about it? Why would they brand themselves as standard? It almost sounds average fireworks,
Well, I don't know did David know that there are fireworks called standard fireworks?
I don't know. David is younger than he looks. I always think that people think because of David's demeanour, he sometimes acts older than the three of us. He's actually the youngest. There's a good 10-year difference, I think, between David and Rob, who's the oldest. But
it's just the way he came back. Standard fireworks? Why didn't you use professional fireworks? Brilliant.
So Lee, is there anything you'd like to do on TV? You've got some more ideas, or is there something you haven't done that you'd like to do?
Well, do you know what? There's whether it's TV or I suppose it's sort of a film, but about 20 years ago, when I started my sitcom, I had an idea for a short 10-minute film. And I'm 20 years into this, and I still haven't finished the script. Every now and again, I'll just potter around with a few lines on it. But I've got it all in my head, I know exactly how it's going to work out, and it's the little 10-minute film that I really want to make. And in fact, I've got one eye on asking John Cooper Clarke to be in it. But yeah, if there's anything I would like, I like the acting because it's not I like doing things that it's not necessarily my forte. So Soccer Aid is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
To do something that's sort of out of my comfort zone, like Soccer Aid, I get a thrill from. Same with my sitcom, really. I was never trained in writing. I certainly haven't been to any sort of drama school. I did study drama at university, but I have to be honest, that was more of a way in of doing stand-up, and it was very much a theoretical course than an acting course. So I was sort of untrained, and I certainly hadn't trained in script writing. So to be able to do that is is a challenge, so which I like the challenge of it. So
Yeah.
I suppose it's the same with the acting. I quite like the sort of difference. If you get an email that says you've been asked to be in an acting role, it's much more varied than, say, would you like to be on a panel game? Would you like to host a quiz show? You almost know what to expect before you finish the email. But with an acting role, they can suddenly say, yeah, you're going off to Morocco for 4 weeks.
So would you do The Jungle or Big Brother?
I definitely wouldn't do Big Brother. I'm pretty sure. To be honest with you, if I told them what I would require on I'm a Celebrity, they wouldn't use me because I don't like flying, so I don't know I'm going to get to Australia. Once I'm not going in a helicopter. I don't eat meat, so I'm not doing any of the challenges. So I think by the time I said yes, I would do it as long as you don't have to do these things. They'd probably say, yeah, you're all right. It'd be like saying I'll do dancing on ice as long as I don't have to ice skate,
Oh, I love dancing on ice. It was my mum's favourite programme, and I still religiously watch it. So.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, no, I think it made good television. Watching Bez wear a huge crash helmet.
I know, yeah.
Be highlight.
How much sleep do you need, Lee?
That's a good question. Well, I go through phases with sleep, and I am currently in a not sleeping well phase. I think it's because I've just had a lot on at once, and now that's come to an end, but my mind's still racing around a bit. I've discovered magnesium, which apparently is a thing. So I have magnesium before I go to bed now. And when you say need, I can, when I'm writing my sitcom, I will go to bed at midnight and quite regularly be up at 6, and I'll be straight off it. So I'm writing immediately. I grab a coffee and I'm off at 6 in the morning. But I feel like 6 isn't quite enough hours. It's like I try and get to bed by 11 if I know I'm going to be. But I'll go through phases where I'm awake at 4 or 5 in the morning sometimes, and that lasts for weeks,
Patrick has some very interesting videos on TikTok about sleeping because he's been a hypnotist. I've been using them, and every single night, I was telling my wife last night, I don't even get through 10 minutes, it seems, before I'm asleep, sorry. But you tell Lee about it.
To be honest with you, Pat, it's a bit like watching clips of my stand-up. But I would be interested in seeing that. So you can basically hypnotise.
It's not hypnosis. We're going back to the conscious and subconscious mind again, basically. What you need to do when you go to bed is you need to shut that conscious mind off, because that's the thing where everything's flying around.
Yeah.
What you do is you lay in your bed and you get comfortable without any limbs touching each other. You breathe in and breathe out. And as you do, relax your body right down. You can feel yourself just sinking into the mattress. And then you recite a story in your head, something from your past. I don't know, a holiday. And say you're walking down the street. So you recite this in your head and you walk down the street and you look at the door.
You mean just imagine it? Or do you mean
just imagine it? Yeah. Try and bring it from your memory.
I see. You're not talking to yourself in your head.
No, you're just imagining it. And you walk down the street and you try and detail it as much as you can. Oh, I remember that door. That was a red door, number 7. And you walk down the street and remember who lived there, and any story, anything that's a good memory. And you just recite that in your mind, detail it as much as you can. And as you go down that story, that shuts off the conscious mind from bombarding you with all this.
It's very good, Lee. I do it at my old road where I lived, my old village, and I'll go from one to one. I don't even normally get past about 4 or 5 houses, and I've gone.
Well, do you think that's part of the reason that we fall asleep watching television, because the story is being told to us? So our conscious mind is leaving us for a moment, and we're concentrating on the story being told.
Exactly, and the same as counting sheep.
Yeah.
The other thing that's worthwhile with somebody creative like yourself is having a pen and pencil by your bed. Because if you've got a lot of things that you've got to do in the morning, you suddenly think, oh, I must do this in the morning. Sit up and write it down and go back down again, because otherwise you'll be worrying about waking up in time and remembering to do this.
I talked about this once, I'd say there's basically, and it's a very big rule of thumb, but basically there's 2 types of comedians. There's one that think of things, you often think of ideas before you go to sleep. You'll think of an idea and then you'll write it down for the very reason that you'll wake up and you'll have forgotten that joke or forgotten that idea. So you write your idea down and you have a pen and paper or write it on your phone. And there's the second type of comedian that just can't be bothered. And I very much used to be the first one, and now I'm the second one because I don't want to think about work. But now you've said it like that, it's for different reasons. It's not because it makes me a better comic. It just makes me sleep better. So I maybe do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I know what you mean. I do go to bed thinking less about jokes nowadays and more about, I must get someone tomorrow to look at that washing machine.
Yeah.
That's what you need to get out of your head. That's what I do now. So you did the 100-mile walk for Sean that we mentioned earlier with Bill Bailey. That must have been a great life. I mean, you walked from Bude to Coombe Haven.
Right. Well, I'm going to stop you there because I always feel like a con man with that particular thing. So Bill asked me to get involved with the walk. And I said, I'm just not available, I'm afraid, but I can join you for the first day. It was like a 5-day walk, and I only did the first day because I just wasn't free. But he booked it after I was already booked on my family holiday. So I couldn't get out of that, and I had to.
But you was at least part of it, for your friend.
We were there on the opening day, and I have to be honest and say it's a sort of blessing in disguise because I'm not sure. I didn't realise just how bad my knees were. It was. I mean, they said afterwards the first day was the worst, but it was up and down. Me and my wife ended up literally walking with people's, those sticks people walk with.
Yeah.
I used to always think, why do people use them? It's really not necessary, surely. And now I realise how necessary it is.
Really? Because I've thought that.
Well, probably because, like me, you've seen them on the flat on the roads. Is that really needed, or are they taking it a bit too seriously? But we couldn't have got through that walk without those sticks because we were going downhill and our knees were just giving in. Because my wife's had a particularly bad knee, but I'm starting to get worse knees as I'm getting older. And so I really think I would have struggled to do that walk.
Is it for a balance thing?
The sticks?
Yeah.
It's just to take the pressure. You're putting the pressure of your weight onto the sticks as much as your legs are. So you're getting it out a bit and taking less weight off your knees, I guess. But certainly going down the hill, you'd put your knee down and it'd just go because there's no strength in your knee. I mean, it's all right now, but at the time I was going through a phase of having bad knees, So, but yeah, anyway, back to the walk. Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it was a real celebration because everyone that knew Sean I felt that most of them were there, friends, family, some of the comics that knew him well, and they used to do that all the time with Bill. Sean and Bill were always walking. So it seemed like, the thing that it just seemed so appropriate to do that,
Yeah. No, it's not.
Were you aware how seriously ill Sean was during the film and then Would I Lie to You?
Well, with Sean's only been on Would I Lie to You once, I think. And I have to be honest, I can't remember at what stage he was on the show. But basically we went on holiday together, his family and my family, and he just came back. We had a dinner date booked in. He cancelled on the day. Turns out that's when he got his diagnosis. He didn't tell me that at the time. He just cancelled, and it was very unlike Sean, to cancel and with not much. He just kept it very quick and simple, so I can't make tonight. And that's thought I remember at the time thinking that's it was unusual for him to not sort of bring and say, look, I'm sorry, I can't make dinner. And then about a month later, he just rang me up and told me the news. Literally no idea. He didn't know when we were on holiday. He had no idea. And that was only been like a couple of months before the diagnosis. But he kept it really quiet, Sean, and hardly told many people at all. And so there were people just had no idea, So when he died, there were people texting me saying, I literally had no idea that he was.
I was one of those people, not texting you, but I didn't realise that how he was. Yeah,
well, a lot. It was from him telling me to passing away was, I think, 4.5 years, something like that, or maybe 5. And during that time, it's amazing how many. I'd get the odd message, mainly from mates actually, but would text me and say, "Is your mate Sean Locke all right? I've just seen him on that TV show and he's looking a bit sort of thinner than normal because he'd obviously been having treatment and what have you." And I because to respect his privacy, because that was his decision whether to tell people or not. I would just lie basically and just say, "Oh, I don't know, I haven't seen that program, or whatever." And haven't seen Sean for a couple of months. Maybe he's just a bit run down or something. I'd just keep it very vague, But yeah, it came a big shock to a lot of people. Obviously, it came as a shock to us all, but we'd at least known, for the close friends for several, 4 or 5 years or whatever. So he was great, Sean. He really was, because I always describe him as, especially in sort of the world of showbiz, when anyone passes away, you hear a phrase a lot, which is, the nicest man in showbiz, or the nicest woman in showbiz, or nicest person I've ever met. And this word nice often comes up. And often these people are very nice, and it's the right phrase to use. But it's also true that in the world of showbiz, it's not that hard to be nice, because a lot of people, they don't really see each other very often. They'll see each other a couple of times a year. They might work together on a TV show. They've been driven in a flash car. They're getting paid a lot of money, and the food's free. What's there not to be nice about? There's a much harder thing, I think, in certainly in showbiz, and that's not so much nice as genuine. And Sean was the most genuine person I felt I knew in showbiz, because you got everything. Sometimes he'd be in a bad mood and you'd know about it. Sometimes he was tired, you'd know about it. Sometimes he was feeling hilarious and you'd know about it. And so you just got the genuine bloke. The bloke you saw on the telly was the same as the bloke that I knew as a mate, Whereas it's quite easy to smile a lot and call everyone darling, and everyone, he's such a lovely man. Oh, thank you, darling. It's like, it's genuine a lot of the time. That's what I have.
Yeah.
And Sean definitely was the most genuine,
And Bobby Ball, he was another lovely character.
Another one, another genuine one. He was no different off stage and on stage. It was, Bobby loved performing. He absolutely loved it, but it didn't really matter to him if he was playing to thousands, which he did, especially in the 80s. Someone once told me there's only 3 comedians that can sell out the Blackpool Opera House. This was a long time ago, by the way, but Joe Longthorne, Victoria Wood, and Billy Connolly. It was seen as, to be able to sell out the Blackpool, it's called the Opera House, right? I've got the right name, haven't I?
Yeah.
I did a night at the Opera House, and so I was sort of jokingly bragging to Bobby, and I said, I managed to sell out the Opera House last week. And he just laughed and went, in 1987, we did 2 shows a day there for 14 weeks. Sold out every show.
Yeah.
The guy was huge, absolutely massive. But he was also happy to, we'd go to the pub with him after recording, and you'd go, where's Bob? You look round, he'd be stood at the end of a table full of strangers, of 6 or 7 people over at the other side of the pub, basically performing, just stood there chatting away to them, making everyone laugh. And, he didn't have that, he was just always funny, he was always jokes and have a laugh,
We live near Great Yarmouth, and there's the Britannia Pier there, where he appeared in the 80s. I saw him with Lenny Henry there.
Right.
All those years ago. But then later on, I saw him again, and I walked past the bar, and there he was doing exactly what you've just said, talking to everybody. So I went in the bar and had a drink and had a chat with him, and that's when I got an autograph.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was blue coat at Hemsby.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is no longer a holiday camp anymore, but
No.
But yeah, no, I went to that when I was a blue coat there. I went over to Yarmouth Pier, saw a couple of shows. I saw Jim Davidson and Michael Barrymore in the 80s.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they used to have all the stars there. But when we were kids, we was talking about it the other day, me and Pat. Every single star, Tommy Cooper and Benny Hill, they all went to Yarmouth.
Yeah, well, all these seaside, that was the thing, wasn't it? To tour the seaside towns.
Yeah.
It's like I was watching an old episode of New Faces on some weird channel recently, and Danny LaRue was the judge. They've changed over the years, because talent shows now will, obviously, they play all the dramatic music, and they'll make it out like there's somebody's life is going to be dramatically changed, and to some degree it will. They'll appear on the Royal Variety Show, but for the most part, they sort of come and go quite quickly, and it's very rare that people are launched through these shows anymore.
No.
But back in the day, they were more realistic and honest about that. And Danny LaRue was commenting on some guy that was about to win or reach the final or whatever. And he said, oh, marvellous, absolutely marvellous. He'll have no problems at all during the summer seasons. A more realistic thing of what will happen, which is around doing all the summer seasons at Great Yarmouth or Blackpool or whatever, that's enough because it's brilliant. These seaside towns. I mean, I'm from Southport, which is a seaside town, and Southport's been very fortunate because I think because of the way that the boundaries work. Southport's part of Sefton, which is sort of connected with being part of Liverpool or what have you, and I think Southport benefit from being connected with a big city like Liverpool that had a lot of investment.
Yeah.
But a lot of these places, and I know when I go on tour, there's just not had the investment, and in the winter, it's just nothing happens. And the sort of British holiday seaside towns, if they're not invested in properly, then they tend to, there's a danger of them disappearing a bit,
Yeah.
Which is a real shame because it's very much part of our heritage and culture in this country. And it can, it can be done well, even I'm bound to brag about my hometown, but I still think it's one of the best towns in Britain because it has changed. It had been reinvested and it has, it's moved with the times, shall we say, and had the money to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes they're very forgotten, these towns. When I went to watch those shows in the 80s, just how big the shows were, there would be always a song and a dance and about 15 support acts, jugglers, and and I had a bit of a go at it myself. Me and Harry Hill did a tour for charity actually a few years ago. We did about 10 nights, and it was great. We had me and Harry were on, and Paul Zenon, the magician, and then we had someone who did like balloon modelling. And, to be on a bill that we don't really see from our generation, the comedy store, you get 4 blokes or women. But to be honest with you, back in the early days, it was predominantly blokes. And I'm not saying we were all the same, but it was take the mic out, do your jokes, 20 minutes, get off. If someone came on with a guitar or did a bit of juggling, it was something a little bit different, And you forget that was what variety used to always be like. A whole range of things. What a night out that was, You ought to dislike something because someone else is coming along in 10 or 15 minutes,
And it could take your whole family.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's why pantomimes are still popular, I think, because, people like to get out with their families.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I did a little appearance in one at Christmas, and I thought I'd forgotten how much of a laugh you can have in a theatre, especially when the pressure's not on you, because you're just doing a quick 5-minute appearance in somebody else's panto, Yeah, it's a good night out. People are very...
What one did you do, Lee?
I did Robin Hood, the one that they do at the Palladium, that Julian Clary does every year.
Yeah, I wrote to Nigel Havers there to get a signed photo, and he sent me one back. So,
good old Nigel.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He's part of that group as well. They do the panto every year, and it's nice, you're in the Palladium. You're not quite got to do the run you do at other pantos. It's a little bit, and of course, if you live in London, then you're back home every night.
Yeah. Well, Patrick.
Yes, I think that's exhausted all my questions. Thank you very much.
I can't believe the time you've given us, Lee. Thank you so much.
Not at all. Sorry it was such a slow start with my bad technology and timekeeping.
We have got your mate on here in February, Harry Hill.
Oh, is Harry coming on?
Yeah. We were going to do him before Christmas, but Martin had to have his chemo.
Oh, okay. Well, stand up to Harry from me.
We will.
Of course, he is, when it comes to medical issues, he's your man because he's a doctor. He'll be great fun.
We're off to Battersea Power Station to interview him, aren't we?
Are you 1-to-1?
Yeah.
You're making me feel bad. I didn't know that was an option.
That's fine.
Don't. It doesn't matter. You've given us plenty of your time, Lee. So thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. Well, I wish you both very well.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks a lot, Lee.
All the best.
Bye. Thank you. Well, there you go, Patrick. That was a fantastic interview, wasn't it?
Oh, very good. I love that one. One.
It felt like a friend that we were just sitting there chatting to.
Yes.
We hope all our viewers, or our listeners, I always say viewers, but our listeners enjoyed that as much as we did.
I think we covered some very interesting subjects there as well. Lou was really open and honest about poor old Sean and, of course, good old Bobby Ball. We had some great material out of Lee there.
No, very, very, very honest interview. Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Yes, thanks very much. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, have a good week as well. See you all, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Who's Tom and Dick podcast with your hosts, Martin Weavers and Patrick Mortimer. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. New episodes are available every Friday. Thanks for tuning in.